Tansei, welcome back to Métis Minute, your source for Métis news in Region 7. We would like to thank you for taking the time to learn about all of the candidates for Region 7 Councillor. Today we are talking to Marc Mantha to discuss a little bit about his campaign, dive into what the important issues are to him during this Region 7 Councillor campaign.
Well, thank you, Mark, for joining me. I wanted to give you a chance. There's something cool happening in the community soon. So if you want to plug that.
First, thank you for having me and starting the morning off with a good smudge with everyone in mind and heart, and wishing all the candidates really well. And Samantha, congratulations on your interviews with the candidates so far. And I'm looking forward to watching your endeavors evolve too, because I love your outro tagline of "See you down the river." And I hope I can help by offering some story leads in the future. And Miigwech is our regional Métis broadcaster. I
Thank
do
you.
have a PSA for our community, and I want to invite everyone to the Kushkupaye Métis Arts Council art exhibit. So come and join me at the Muskoka Steamships and Discovery Center at the Wharf in Gravenhurst on Saturday, April 27th. That'll be from 9 to 4 p.m. And also calling on all artists, all ages, all mediums to contact George Simard or Patty Belanger, or contact me for more details. And this is an open invitation to all of our MNO and area dignitaries and leaders from our towns and districts, and to you, the citizens, to this amazing exhibit and celebration of our expression and creativity. Now, admission has no formal charge. A donation at the door is welcome if you like. The Muskoka Discovery Center is a world-class museum, and I just toured with George Simard last Friday, and he was very impressed, and he's very excited. Now I'm ready to dive in, Samantha.
Yeah, well, I was going to say it's Gravenhurst. It's up in your neck of the woods. So thank you for reminding us all to come up there and visit. I was going to ask you, why get into Métis politics?
There are many reasons, and maybe the best way to share is a story with you, because we are storytellers after all. And I was never fond of the word politics, and here's a great quote from Katrina McDonald. She's the treasurer of the Moon River Métis Council. It's just politics is not a term I like or will settle for. To me, that says it all, because it's about people over politics, and it's a focus on positive change and moving forward altogether. And I've been involved in civics and government for about 20 years. The most profound event and reason I carry on happened some years ago when I was dismissed from a Métis community council. Now, as a result, I would embark on a journey to make our governance function better and to protect our rights. So all council charters and community codes are like an onion, right? It has a skin, but when you pulled back the skin, we had no layers to our onion, no protocols or very little. And as a councillor back then, I requested governance training to the council president on behalf of the council. After some attempts, I was told that it wasn't necessary, but yet I observed other councils were getting training from the Métis Nation of Ontario. So I waited patiently and respectfully for some time, but my colleagues encouraged me to advocate for them again. So I did, but there was still no governance training. I reached out to the Métis Nation of Ontario, and I was advised that access to governance training was a right for all councils. However, a formal complaint was filed for my dismissal from the council. It's called an Article 27. I was confused, I was baffled, and of course, I was ignorant to our council governance. I didn't know what to do back then. The complaint to me seemed vexatious and presented some false information, and someone can file false accusations. This was unverified with no burden of proof, and there was no mediation for this filing either. No one's volunteer dedication to serving citizens should be at risk like this. That is not the Métis Nation that I envisioned. So what could I do? I pursued advocating for the rights of my council. According to, and with guidance from a professor of law and a lawyer, one of which was Métis, so it was both a colonial and a Métis perspective. That was important to me.
Mm.
Article 27 to dismiss needs to be removed or suspended immediately, and one of them uses the term abolished. This is of great concern for our elected councils, where someone on a council can file to dismiss a council member that is elected by you, the citizens. It disregards your voice and your choice of leadership, and the electorate's rights to this, and the citizens' rights are also violated. So I don't know. Can you tell that I've learned a few things since then? Um, I did get governance training after all, not through the M&O, not yet. I was gifted from another organization a scholarship for a certificate in governance. And it's just amazing how, your community can watch out for you. And I must tell you, the certificate was at the Institute of Corporate Directors and the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Business. And there's a very interesting coincidence that the teaching masters for the program were some of the same consultants to the Métis Nation of Ontario. Okay, fast forward to today. M&O governance training was the highlight of 2023 for all councils to be trained and fulfill every council member's right to know and learn good governance. So I'm saying to everyone, never give up, advocate for your rights. Now, I didn't know it at the time. Being dismissed from council was a blessing and would lead to the citizens of Moon River having their first elected council president and council in many years. So it all started with adversity, turning it into positive change and giving the voice back to the citizens. This is a very meaningful closing note. Now, the president of the council that dismissed me all those years ago is an esteemed and valued working colleague today. Together, we have achieved great things for our citizens working collaboratively. That is because we both had the professional maturity to grow and to move on. And that is people over politics. Getting along and treating each other with respect needs to come from the example of our leadership from the top all the way down, because this is a new era of leadership, fairness, and open, transparent communication, Samantha. This is the Métis Nation that I envision.
Mm. And yeah, speaking of transparency and all of that, yeah, for people who maybe don't know a bit about you or haven't really been up to Moon River, obviously you've invited us all up there for the art crawl. Yeah, maybe you want to explain a bit about, who you are, where you're from.
I'll just tell you a quick little story before we start. I think I was out, it was when I was canvassing for my nominations. You needed a certain number of signatures. So I went and knocked on a door. It was getting late, but I was determined to get all my nomination signatures in one day. And so they could see me at the door. And she came to the door. She goes, you know what? I don't normally answer my door at 10 o'clock at night, but I saw your face and I recognized you. And so I said, well, I'm looking for, I said the last name of the family. And she goes, they're right next door. So, for those who don't know me, I sort of was determined some time ago. I think I said that one way or another, I'm going to meet everybody in Region 7 eventually. Anyways, heritage and ancestry and who I am, for some time, I didn't really know. And I'm not the only one, because my aunties and uncles, or we called them mononks and matantes, never spoke of roots. Of the 7 generations, we were part of that lost generation. And a lot of you are still searching and should never be embarrassed for what was taken from us out of fear. This lost generation cultural genocide was caused by the use of fear. Some cannot confirm their ancestry. Some grandparents are still anxious and they're fearful to acknowledge their ancestry by applying for citizenship. Some will not approve the release of something as simple as a long form birth certificate to, complete the links because the trauma is still with them and they're still protecting their children. Uh, it was in their lifetime that the big scoop happened and residential schools were still prevalent. And my papa got his citizenship later in life, and I followed shortly after. So it is an honor to go back down the path and bring our family heritage back into the light. For me, there were hints and clues along the way. Some very interesting joual and French michif that was nothing like the French that I learned in school. Um, a few cousins and an uncle I met only once when I was very young, but I wasn't sure why I had not seen them before, and I was trying to understand and make connections back then. And I think this was around the time when my father began reconnecting and what led him to MNO citizenship. Now, after I graduated, I began my career up north for some time. But like a modern Métis, I traveled to the modern harvest. So that's to say where the jobs were. And interestingly, I would end up working for the Hudson's Bay Company in Toronto. However, I almost ended up near the Arctic Circle interviewing a few years earlier to manage a Hudson's Bay outpost store in a tiny community where supplies were flown in a few times a year. I had some land here in Region 7, and I had probably walked a few thousand kilometers in the forests of Region 7 over the years. I would come up here to rediscover the stars, and I remember those were the stars of my childhood with no light pollution. I knew this was my home and that I would return, and I did. I constructed a small home to make a small footprint and preserve the trees that would keep my home cool in the summers. And I designed and I built a mini home. Why would I want a big house when I had a 5-acre living room with lots of crown land to explore? And I got some chickens for fresh eggs every day. My little cast iron wood stove used up maybe a cord and a half of firewood while my neighbors went through a lot more. I supported my neighbors too. That was by using all local services and materials. And my home was designed in such a way that it could heat itself passively on the coldest days of winter. And I wanted to have as little impact as possible for every consideration in building my home. And I immersed myself as deep as possible into the Métis way to be very, very involved in the community. And what a gift to come home. It was the rivers and the lakes and the streams, the great granite landscapes and tall pines. And actually, that reminds me of a couple of lines of a song that I'm working on right now. And it was the farmscapes and the wholesome harvests, from those local farmers. And just to breathe the country air like I was doing this morning out on the front porch and canoe on a perfectly still lake at sunrise. And that was when then I remembered how I was taught to paddle silently on a mirrored lake. And my mind was clear of all the distractions from all those years of working in the big city. I felt a little younger, I felt healthier. And so now here I am. And today we struggle. We're all struggling with the high cost of everything, food and education, housing, healthcare with limited coverage, support for our seniors and our veterans. Our quality of life and well-being are at stake. And that Métis quality of life and Bill C-53 are priorities. And to the candidates, I do not feel I am running against any of you. I feel more like I'm running with all of you. And all of our candidates have the best of intentions, and we all want what's best for you, the citizens. Now here I am. What a journey. I'm here with Samantha on the Métis Minute.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you talked a bit about, the adversity and being on the Moon River Council. How has all of that, maybe your political career so far, prepared you to run for Region 7 councillor?
As president of the Moon River Métis Council, I am on 2 councils, right? So that would be the Moon River Community Council and the Region 7 Council. So President Greg Garrett and I are the candidates with experience on the Region 7 Council. And I will ask you, should that be a key consideration for voters because I think it's vital. Although all the candidates have something to offer. Now, at the Georgian Bay Candidate Social, Samantha, you would have loved it. I said it would have been such a powerhouse to roll all the candidates up into one because we all have the best of intentions and want what's best for our citizens. I started to prepare for my role before being on council. You know, during the pandemic, I wasn't able to obtain support from the council, so I connected with other agencies to get food to our struggling citizens because I'm Métis and we know how to get things done. So a couple of times a month, I met with other agencies in a parking lot. We did a kind of on-the-spot triage, pre-assessment of each agency's needs. Like we were just there in a circle and we were talking back and forth and figuring it out before the truck got there. So when the food supplies truck arrived, we could distribute it on the spot the moment the gate of the food trailer dropped. A load of organic produce, non-perishables, baby food, sometimes baked goods and toys would arrive too. So the gate for the truck would open. We all pitched in, we loaded each other's vehicles and had everything ready to go in 30 minutes. For our deliveries, if we left at 10 a.m., we could be back by 10 p.m., having filled every request from our citizens delivered directly to the front doors. And it was a vast catchment, and we did not deny any request in the catchment, no matter how far. So this brought me as close as one could get to the citizens. And there's something about showing up on the front doorstep that opens up a trust where people share so openly what matters and what their struggles are. I learned a lot. My experience on the regional council really, to me, is so invaluable. And what an honor to be exposed to that experience and that history and that knowledge. We worked together and laid the groundwork for unprecedented success for our region. Our funding agreement negotiations are better than ever, and more is needed in that potential funding growth. The number of meetings was a marathon, unlike any other year in Region 7 history. We are not salaried like PCM&O. Presidents and councils are volunteers. Doing your service on the community council first makes sense to get the knowledge and vital experience, then move upwards to serving on the PCM&O. The plus is, as president of the Moon River Métis Council, I also gain knowledge and experience of the regional council. And as much as we need to secure and grow funding for so many categories of need, we need to think long-term of our own self-sustained communities. Self-sustained community doesn't have an end date, like funding agreements that have to be renegotiated with no promise of being indefinite. So think about establishing regional food sovereignty to grow, share, and harvest our own food and expand for sale to the greater economy, then reinvest profits back into our communities. So it's like working towards independent communities that provide for themselves, kind of like we used to do historically. So imagine the health and well-being benefits and the cultural growth. I want us all to think bigger. The Moon River Métis Council and Region 7 Council have provided me much exposure, learning, and experience with our Métis Nation. Even as president of Moon River, I was at the table with the provincial ministers of the environment and Indigenous leaders from across Canada. I was there to be an ally to clean water, and to Chair David Piccini, I said, the best way out of the challenges being discussed here was going to be all together. I'm very involved with districts and municipalities in the region, and I've built many relationships that are evolving into strong alliances where we all work together. At the same time, sharing your voice with them. And I'm ready for that, Samantha.
Yeah, and you talked a bit about a few of the issues that are facing Region 7 citizens, but yeah, if you want to talk a bit more about when you've been canvassing, going around, the campaign's been going on for a little bit and you've been to events talking to citizens, what do you think are like the biggest issues that are pressing M&O citizens in Region 7 today?
Getting into that, first of all, there are too many citizens who can't hear me. They're
Mm.
disconnected and they're invisible. They don't know our priorities, and we can't reach them for all kinds of reasons. There's no access to tech or internet, no phone, emails that bounce, contact information. 20% of our citizens are invisible. We confirm that across Region 7. So we're going to tackle that one citizen at a time. Now, in Georgian Bay, at the candidate social, I call it a roundtable. It literally was. That's what it turned into. And we shared ideas and possible solutions. And there we were all together, problem solving before even being elected. That's my kind of Métis Nation. Now, what is at stake? The biggest issues are Métis quality of life and Bill C-53. Now, with the Métis quality of life, that constitutes an umbrella of challenges. So it's a considerable list that starts with basic needs: food, a roof over your head, and healthcare. Now, if a citizen doesn't have any one of these basic needs, they're stuck in survival mode. Our young adults can't afford a place to live. Seniors opt out of medication that's not covered, or they half dose to stretch out prescriptions and they end up in the hospital. And a regional work plan might start with a template to distribute across categories of needs. Then these percentages should be flexible so councils can customize to their communities. And I'm looking forward to the teamwork and collaboration ahead.
Yeah, and you talked a bit about that's a large number, 20% of the citizens being invisible. We've had a recent boundary change where we've seen citizens, maybe move to different councils, and with 20% being invisible, there might be some that maybe aren't even aware of their council and things like that. How are you going to assure, if you're elected as Region 7 councillor, that maybe we're making sure that every citizen's having access to these services that the MNO provides, whether their councils moved farther from them or whether maybe they don't even have access to a council because they don't know who their council is?
Well, you know what? I'd like to thank you for the interview with Ron Lepage, where he shared his insights and very direct experience and knowledge on the issue. It's good to have a go-to person for any questions and support on these matters. And I also agree with the town hall Zoom meetings that he proposed, because the process and how that works is much more complicated. And actually, President Garrett just posted this morning, really expanding on that whole process and how it works. So I really appreciated that too. And first, we have to investigate. So that is to map out the affected citizens. A good start to determine the scope of accessibility issues for council support and travel to gatherings. And all the councils of the region have large geographies. So moving, spreading out, and rotating the locations of certain events and workshops could be up for discussion. And that conversation has been active in Moon River, to have workshops and gatherings in Parry Sound to the west. We had a gathering in McTier to the north, the AGM in Gravenhurst to the east, and the next event or workshop might be to the south in Severn. And since we're on the topic of access, is to bring the conversation to the table about those with limited access to transportation and accessibility to any events and meetings.
Yeah, and one thing we want people and citizens to get more involved in and be more aware about is Bill C-53, which you mentioned a bit earlier. Yeah, how as Region 7 councillor will you assure that you're involving citizens in the process of our self-government? And do you think it's important to engage any of the citizens in Region 7 to make sure that they have a voice building the Constitution?
Absolutely. To bring in regional town halls to complement and reinforce the MNO town halls and updates, and any involvement in the process by citizens matters. I don't know how to emphasize it. I don't even know how to put it into words. That is just key. It's a foundation to have the citizens involved. The automated messaging system to our riding ministers of parliament should make a comeback on the heels of the third reading, because we should be beating our drums louder than ever.
Why do you think it's important for citizens to vote in this PCMNO election and become more involved in it?
Our historic turnout for voting is very, very low, and voting is the best way to affect change, to bring in a new era of leadership. You have some very good choices of quality candidates. If you want a strong voice, vote for Marc Mantha, PCMNO councillor for Region 7, but mostly for the veterans and service people who fought and gave the ultimate sacrifice, and those who still protect our right to make democratic choices. It's really important. Like, please vote now.
And they can vote now because voting's open right now. But yeah, I think unless you had any last words that you wanted to leave voters with.
I'd like to offer a prayer. And first, I'd like to ask anyone if they know the citizen at the Barrie All Candidates meeting who asked the question about Article 27, to please thank them for me. They were kind to ask Chair Hank Rollinson if it was okay to ask that question. And Miigwech to Chair Rollinson. I'm a big fan of transparency and the new era of leadership. So you know what? Skip the gossip and walk with me. Now, the prayer I wrote, I wrote this prayer the night before a meeting with the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. And the nuclear industry, like all of us, has a huge responsibility to our future generations. So Creator, Miigwech for the guidance of our ancestors, our open minds and open hearts, for the relationships that continue to grow and bring us together with the common thread of doing the good work that benefits all of us. We are hopeful and trusting that we will continue down this path with our friends to protect all that keeps us well and safe. The one who plants a tree, knowing they will not be there to enjoy the shade, is the essence of caring for our children and generations to come. It is an act of compassion and love. It is the way forward. Miigwech, merci, and thank you, Samantha. I will see you down the river.
We'd like to thank Marc for sitting down with us today to discuss his campaign. We would like to thank you for showing an interest in this PCMNO election. Voting is now open until May 6th at 6 p.m. If you would like to cast your vote but aren't sure how, please check out a previous episode of Metis Minute, where we explained all the ways in which you can vote in this election. Merci for watching, and we'll see you down the river.